الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. We praise God and we bear witness there is only one God. God is doing everything, and this is the conclusion that we must reach if we are to be saved. That God is doing everything is a quality of God. If you don't know this quality, then you don't know God. And this is why the Quran is full of those verses talking about people who do believe in God, but they're going to hell because they do not know God as He really is. In Surah 8, verse 17, we're told that there was the appearance of a battle with a small handful of believers fighting a big, huge army of disbelievers. And the believers were busy running around and stabbing and throwing arrows and shooting, and so they think they're fighting. But the verse tells us that God is the one who is fighting. God is the one who did the killing and the throwing of the arrows. God is doing everything. We only do the decision to be with God or not. And the whole design of this life is to effect a test for each one of us. This whole life is a test, nothing else. And we read in Surah 51, verse 56, that God created this whole universe, created us just to worship Him alone. Anything else are just the means for provision. The jobs, what you do to go to school, find work, develop your talents, or whatever, is just an outside appearance to provide for you, give you the dollars, the food, the roof over your head, and so on. But the main job, when you wake up in the morning, my main job today is to worship God alone and to observe my duties towards God. All those duties, of course, are designed for our own benefit, to develop and grow our soul through the prayers, the fasting, and so on. But the whole world is designed for a test, in that a person is required to pray before sunrise, for example, in order for his or her soul to grow and develop. And some person may say, oh, the sun is rising too early. 4 o'clock in the morning, in July and August. They complain. Well, the sun rises at 4 o'clock, I'm not going to get up at 3:30 to do the morning prayer. So God says, okay, I'm going to make it rise at 7. And God designed the earth a little bit lopsided, so it will go up and down in front of the sun. In this way, creating the winter and the short day and the long day. And God will say, okay, now the sun is rising at 7 o'clock. Are you going to pray the morning prayer before sunrise? See, God designed the test this way. And God nullifies the excuses of everybody in order to see who is going to make it to the highest heaven. And that is the person who's going to pray before sunrise, no matter what time the sun rises. And also to assure the place of those who are going to the lowest pit of hell, because even when the sun rises at 7 o'clock, they will not pray the morning before sunrise. So you can see the range of the time of sunrise and how God did it to sift out the ranks. The people who will pray when the sun rises at 6. And people who will pray when it rises at 6:30. And people who do the morning prayer when it rises at 7:15. So there will always be dropouts. And there will be those who pray no matter what time the sun rises. 3 in the morning, they'll be up at 2:30. And they'll do the morning prayer and go back to sleep. But they will do it. People will say, I'm going to fast in Ramadan 16 hours. The day is 16 hours long. And I'm going to eat no food, no water for 16 hours, and it's so hot. God says, okay, I'm going to cool it down for you. I'm going to make it 7 hours. And God does that. So you can see that the fasting days range from 7 hours, 9 hours of cool day to 16 hours of hot days. And you can see the test going on. And you can see the dropouts. Some people will fast even if the day is 20 hours in August. And nobody dies anyway from that. It's good for you. It takes down your blood pressure, reduces your weight and all that. And nobody dies if he or she fasts for 2 consecutive days. But there are people who will fast even if the day is 20 hours long. For the last 19 years, we've been giving the Muslim world evidence that they have deviated, that we must adhere to the Quran alone. And we've been showing them the verses in Quran. So they said, well, who is this Rashad Khalifa? He's an ignorant person. He's never been to Azhar. And he's duping the ignorant people who don't know anything about Islam. They wrote this. They published it. They lectured and so on. He's a science man. He's not a religious man. If you hear it from a scholar from Azhar, then you can, they wrote down that Rashad is ignorant. He doesn't have a religious degree. He's not from the Azhar, and he's deceiving the ignorant people. And God said, okay, I'm going to nullify, like the long day, the sunrise at 7, said, okay, I'm going to produce for you the best Azhar scholar. And he's sitting right with us right now. He's not a usual Azhar scholar. He is one in a long time that was the first of his class in the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior years. He's not a common Azhar person. He didn't have a connection. A lot of people in the Azhar have connections with the dean or the president of the university, and they pass, and so on. But there are special students who get these degrees, and they are graduate with the first honors, they call it. And he's one of those, one of the unusual students. And when he graduated, the first of his class, he was hired in the university, and he taught at the university. And he made his PhD on the same subject that we preach here in this mosque, that the Prophet will not intercede on your behalf in the day of judgment, that the Prophets are human beings who made mistakes. And they gave him the PhD with the highest degree ever in the Azhar. So it's not just, God said, I'm going to give you an Azhar man, not just an Azhar man, I'm going to give you the best. And so he goes out and he teaches, and he steals the students from all the other professors. These are facts that are recorded now in the headlines and the front pages that came out in the last month as he was in prison, and our powerful Fatha got him out, alhamdulillah. But he would go and teach in the senior class, and then he will go to teach the next period. He will be in the sophomore class. The students from the senior class will follow him to the sophomore class, and the professor of the senior class will complain. Where are my kids? Where are the students? Or they followed Subhi Mansour to the sophomore class. So he raised a lot of jealousy within the university, besides the fact that he was preaching exactly, it's identical to what we've learned here in this mosque and what we've been preaching. And the enemies of Quran, the enemies of God went crazy because God nullified their excuse. He said, okay, you don't like Rashad Khalifa as a chemist? Here's an Azhar man, one of your own, and one of your best. And he's preaching the same thing. He discovered the truth. And I don't know where did God hide him from Satan, because Satan monopolized all those Azhar people. He escaped somehow. God protected him. So he was supposed to give the khutbah today, but he refused. He said, I want to see your system first. Then I will give the khutbah. Also, he wants to increase his mastership of the English language, which he does very well. It really surprised me. But we have now this newspaper saying, how did he get the PhD in this subject? Now they want to put his committee on trial. Why did they give him the PhD? How did that happen? And this happened to be the leaders of the Sunnah Institute. The chairman of his PhD committee is now the head of the Sunnah Institute in Cairo. And he says, how did I do that? They just can't figure it out. But he is a living proof of God's power. they are saying that let's take the PhD back from him. It's things unheard of. How can you take it back? I mean, not only are they saying, how did he get the PhD? They only get the PhD with this high degree, high honors, the highest honors. Because the first honors. Because martabat al-sharaf al-ula in Arabic. The rank of the highest honor. And it had all these things, and they cut it down, by the way. But after cutting out whatever they wanted, they still don't like it in the newspaper. So this shows you the power of God, and shows how God nullifies the excuses of the people in order to effect the test. For those who don't like the sun rising at 4 o'clock, God will make it rise at 7, gradually. And for those who don't like fasting for 16 hours in the day, God will make it 9 hours in a cool day. Tubu ila Allah. Repent. Alhamdulillah. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. I know many of you are anxious to hear our report on our Canada trip. One of the purposes of the khutbah on Friday is to study our affairs and see what is going on. And Dr. Mansour and myself went to Canada in the weekend, and there were a number of miracles that happened. First of all, somehow I forgot that an Egyptian going to Canada needs a visa, an entry visa. And what is worse, an Egyptian who applies for a visa in any Canadian consulate, they have one in Seattle. There is a 5-day mandatory 5-day waiting period. Because they telex Cairo and ask if this person is a terrorist or what. And even as far as Egypt is concerned, he's the biggest terrorist as far as Egypt is concerned. And his being here is actually a miracle because he is forbidden from travel. There were people in the prison who were there for years for religious reasons because they offended the person who's interviewing them or something. And this is something that he did the first day. On the first day, when they were interrogating him, the officer or the lawyer, whoever it is, the district attorney in the prison, interviewing him and said, I'm a Muslim, I don't pray, and I don't fast, but I'm going to heaven. Ain't I? He said, no, you're going to hell. He didn't mince words. And he's out here, so there are stories of people who offended the interrogators inside and then never made it out. They're still there for years. And we know them by name. But he's out here. We sent a few telegrams from around the world to the president's office in Egypt, and we read Al-Fatiha, and this is a very powerful place, alhamdulillah. So, for a variety of reasons, they let him out on his own recognizance with the stipulation that he's not to leave the country. And now he's haunting them because we're sending the new perspective. And the title is Al-Azhar Disbelieves in Quran. Now they called him Munkir as-Sunnah, okay, in Egypt, or something we readily admit, the rejecter of Sunnah. And prisons affect a person's psyche. Somehow, and when he happened to leave the prison on a miserable day, the weather was raining, it was mud. Cairo was not prepared, especially the area where he lives is not prepared for rain. And there was a lot of mud there where you step in the mud, and then you go and you leave your shoe in the mud, and then you pick up your shoe, put it in front of you, put your foot in it, and then you leave your left shoe in the mud. So he caught himself talking aloud to himself, saying, okay, Munkir as-Sunnah, deny a rejecter of Sunnah, be careful lest you slip down or something. So he was out talking to himself with this title that they gave him, Munkir as-Sunnah. Now, as of the next issue of the perspective, we're going to call the Azhar people Munkir al-Quran. the rejectors. The rejectors of Quran. And we're going to issue emergency issues of the perspective every other week, and we're mailing them to them over there. And we're proud of our title, Rejectors of Sunnah, and we'll see how proud they are of their title as Rejectors of Quran, something that is supported by evidence. For example, an editorial, the official Azhar journal, wrote an editorial in January, the last issue, attacking him. And in that, they said that the Quran needs to be detailed. I mean, there's about 10 statements directly against Quran. So we're just taking this statement, putting it, this is what the Azhar ignoramuses say, and this is what God says. And we give the verses that say the Quran is fully detailed. And we're going to do this for the rest of the year. Okay, we went to, so this is, I just got diverted to the miracle of him leaving Cairo, leaving Egypt. It is an absolute miracle. As a matter of fact, an informer in his group found out that he was leaving, but without a definite date, and he did something that cancelled that informer's information. But in any rate, we're glad that he's here. So we headed for Canada, and Ismail Barakat, most of you know him, he's a very hot-tempered, very loud, beautiful person, we love him. And he was supposed to meet us in Seattle. And he swears he was there at 1:30, and we were there at 1 o'clock, and we waited until 3 o'clock. And according to his account and our account, we existed in the same place, but we never saw each other, we never heard each other. Loud as he is, and he said, he said, I even took the public address system and I called you. We didn't hear a thing. We didn't see him, we didn't hear him, he didn't see us, we didn't, and there was nothing. Anyway, so we waited until the next day when Raymond Catton, now Ismail went back to Seattle, and I had nothing to do, so I tried to smuggle Dr. Mansour into Canada. It didn't work out. I rented the car, went to the borders, and usually they let you pass, you know. Because the guy at the bus said, where are you from? I said, Tucson, Arizona. He said, can I see some IDs? I said, okay. So we're going to turn around. So meantime, Ismail went back to Canada, and Raymond Catton went with us in the morning to the Canadian consulate, where we found out that you have to have 5-day mandatory waiting period for an Egyptian to get a visa. However, the vice consul, a lady, turned out to be from Raymond Catton's old country's village, a small village. It's called Lancashire in England, and they spoke the same language. You know, this is how they knew each other. Good morning. And she said, good morning. And he said, oh, you're from Lancashire. And she said, that's right. She said, okay, here's the visa. Free. So, I mean, if Ismail Barakat went with us, first we'll have ended up in jail. So he will never go back to Vancouver without this man. He's Dr. Mansour's best friend. And had they mentioned that you cannot have a visa to enter Canada, I mean, Barakat would have destroyed the consulate. I'm telling you, we would have ended up. So thank God, we just didn't see him, and he didn't see us. So with all these delays, we made it to the Friday prayer in Vancouver, and we went immediately after the khutbah. And they just finished the khutbah and the prayer, so we sat with them, and they all cancelled going back to work or anything, and we sat until 4 o'clock, from about 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and we got to talk to them, and we discussed lots of things. We did exactly everything we wanted to do in the Friday prayer. And then we had meetings on Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night in 3 different places. There were about 50 or 60 people, and everything was just fantastic. The objectors of the past didn't even show up. There were no more objections. And what I carried with them to them is the new profound conclusion that we all must have, and that God is doing everything. So, as you can tell, we'll be talking about these things for the next few weeks, inshallah, and we may discuss more details tonight. And you will get a chance to meet Dr. Mansour. We're glad he's here. And it is a tremendous victory. So it is time to quit. Aqim as-salah.